Ever since Bleach was first conceived in the early 2000s by Tite Kubo, it has proven itself to have a wealth of deeper meaning and symbology. In my opinion, the series is far more than just a orange-haired protagonist having Shinigami powers who's able to defeat hollows. Bleach has delivered a lot of revolutionary things which have transformed mainstream anime and manga. One example that I really want to focus on within this video is how Bleach handles black representation and why it truly excels in comparison to other series. As a part of the big three, alongside Naruto and One Piece, Bleach had enormous cultural influence, with Tite Kubo doing a fantastic job of leveraging his platform in order to change how black characters are represented within Japanese media. It's amazing how Bleach, from its different areas, from the Soul Society to Hueco Mundo, had naturally incorporated characters of various different ethnicities without making their presence feel artificial or exceptional. Kubo's characters of color are not token minorities, they are a key part of the cast of characters within the series. We see characters of darker skin tones occupying positions of power across the spectrum, from captains to noble family members to villains and even allies. Bleach also broke this perception that black characters within anime need to follow established patterns or roles. Kubo created figures with narrative autonomy. Their motivations, conflicts, and developmental paths weren't anchored to their racial identity. And this is something that modern media still struggles to overcome. The impact of Bleach has continued to resonate across the anime community, with black and minority fans finding something truly transformative in the series, and this is representation which doesn't feel like an afterthought or a compromise. It's more than just seeing characters with familiar skin tones, it's about seeing Kubo give recognition and dignity as well as the right levels of complexity to these characters of color who deserve to exist within his fantasy world without having to justify why. Bleach created a cultural foothold for many fans of color, especially in the cosplay community, where you see so many people cosplaying as characters like Yoruichi or Kaname Tosen. In order to appreciate Bleach's significance, we need to look at some historical context. When Bleach had first debuted, the anime industry's approach to black representation was slightly changing from a deeply problematic past. Before Bleach, there were amazing examples of black representation within series like Cowboy Bebop and even Afro Samurai. But unfortunately, with Japanese media, this wasn't always the case, as the entire Japanese media landscape was shaped by limited cultural exposure and a homogeneous population. This often resulted in black characters in certain stories being depicted via a distorted lens of stereotypes and Western media influences. Black characters were treated as background props with minimal dialogue or development, or they were stereotype-based archetypes, as they were typically fighters, musicians, or exotic foreigners. Characters of color were depicted with enormous lips, pitch black, featureless skin, and sometimes explicitly racist design elements. And beyond the disrespectful visual design, black characters rarely received meaningful story arcs, complex motivations, or even pivotal plot contributions. They existed primarily as narrative devices who were there for comic relief, intimidation factors. So yes, while black characters were present, they were not fully realized participants within the stories that they featured in. It was unfortunate, but their racial identity was often the defining trait of these characters, and this was presented as the only noteworthy thing that they were contributing to the world of that given story. Bleach emerged during a time when the tide was turning. Kubo had deliberately subverted a lot of these disrespectful patterns within media as he positioned black characters throughout hierarchies of power and importance. They weren't just fighters, they were actually captains, nobles, and pivotal figures who had agency in order to shape the narrative of Bleach. And while this may seem normal in today's day and age, the integration of black characters in this way was revolutionary. Characters of color were not segregated into specific roles or a unique faction, but they were actually distributed naturally throughout the story's social landscape. Following Bleach's pioneering approach, the anime industry has made some considerable progress, with anime like Carol and Tuesday and even Michiko and Hatchin having black and brown protagonists respectively. My Hero Academia also features ethnically diverse heroes with distinctive powers and personalities. This progress that is seen reflects some broader cultural shifts as we see anime becoming even more globalized, but Bleach's contribution to this evolution cannot be overlooked. It demonstrated that characters of color can be complex, popular, and commercially successful within a major franchise. By Kubo incorporating diversity so naturally into his world, Bleach had helped to normalize the presence of characters of color within anime, and it raised audiences' expectations for authentic representation in other works. Kaname Tōsen and Yoruichi Shihoin stand out as the most key characters of color within Bleach, and their narrative complexity does offer us a case study in how representation can transcend tokenism through layered characterization. Kaname Tōsen inverts several stereotypes through his narrative positioning. He was the former captain of the 9th Division, and he embodies calm rationality rather than emotional impulsiveness, which is often assigned to black characters in media. His traits of tranquility, philosophical depth, and commitment to abstract ideals like justice directly contradict the physical aggression stereotypically associated with black male characters. What makes Tōsen's portrayal truly revolutionary? Tōsen is both a character of color as well as being somebody who is blind. He occupies a space that is rarely seen within anime and manga, and in general media as a whole. Kubo never positions these traits as weaknesses to him. Instead, Tōsen's blindness becomes a source of unique perspective and even power for him, as Tōsen has never even seen a single face, so he judges people solely by their actions and principles. This philosophical advantage creates some major moral clarity with his character, while at the same time limiting his ability to perceive hypocrisy, and this is a nuanced character flaw that drives his story arc. When Tōsen eventually betrays the Soul Society, it gives this character of color a major role within the story, when it's later revealed that Tōsen's actions had actually stemmed from a deeply personal trauma, with the murder of his friend being overlooked and the perpetrator being unpunished. This ends up creating a morally ambiguous antagonist who is driven by understandable pain rather than inherent villainy. You can appreciate why Tōsen holds a grudge against the Soul Society, and you can understand his perspective to some extent. And then you have his incredible bond with Komamura, which further explores these themes of justice, hypocrisy, and morality. And I have several videos on the channel talking about why I believe Tōsen and Komamura are some of the best written characters within Bleach, so definitely do check those out after this video, especially if you're interested to know how the theme of revenge is intrinsically linked to both Komamura and Tōsen. Now, on the other hand, we have Yoruichi, who disrupts anime's conventional portrayal of both female and black characters through her unique positioning within the story of Bleach. Yoruichi's introduction into the story subverts expectations in an incredible way, as she first appears as a mysterious talking cat before it's revealed that she's not just any ordinary woman, but she belongs to the noble Shihoin household, and she was once the leader of the Onmitsukido, as well as the captain of the 2nd Division. With Kubo giving her such a high aristocratic status as she belongs to the Shihoin clan, it fundamentally reframes how black characters can exist within fantasy realms. They are more than just outsiders, immigrants, or exotic foreigners. Here, Yoruichi belongs to the highest level within the power structure of the Soul Society. She was born into privilege rather than having to justify her presence or inclusion within the plot. Yoruichi does not need to overcome any racial barriers within the story of Bleach, as she already occupies the elite spaces which black characters of color are typically excluded from. Yoruichi combines playful mischief with deadly seriousness. And then you have the fact that she belongs to the noble Shihoin clan. This gives her pragmatic adaptability, as well as being able to deliver some insane combat ferocity when the situation requires it. This multi-dimensional layering of Yoruichi's character creates somebody who defies easy characterization. This is a rarity, especially for a black female character who is often flatlined into a singular stereotypical role. These characters demonstrate how Bleach succeeds where many other series fails, by creating characters of color whose stories are fundamentally way more than just what their ethnicity is. And then you have Kubo's visual approach in how he depicts black characters. Within Bleach, we see a masterclass in how anime and manga can honor human diversity through thoughtful character design choices. What I love about Kubo's character designs is that he doesn't just apply a single black template to all of his characters of color. Each of the characters that he has designed are distinctive individuals with varied features, skin tones, and personal styles. Compare Tosen's composed features to Jackie Tristan's fierce determination, or even Uetsu Nimaiya's vibrant expressiveness to Lil Barrow's sharp angular design. Each of these characters of color receives the same individualized attention which has been afforded to any other character of any other ethnicity. Even looking at the hair designs of these characters, it also stands out as one of Kubo's most significant achievements with these characters. He showcases the versatility of different black hairstyles without fetishizing them. Tosen's braided styles evolved throughout the story, serving as visual markers of his character development. Then you have Yoruichi's purple hair, which provides a distinctive silhouette while also avoiding stereotypical black hairstyle tropes. Love Aikawa's afro also becomes a signature element of his character design without defining his entire personality. These varied approaches acknowledge the cultural significance of black hair while treating it as a normal aspect of character design rather than as a unique exotic feature. Even the way that Kubo handles skin tone demonstrates remarkable nuance. He renders melanated characters with proper dimensions, with appropriate highlights and shadows which maintain character distinctiveness under various different lighting conditions. This stands in sharp contrast to earlier anime and manga which often depicted characters of color with flat, featureless coloring. By having characters with multiple color shades from Yoruichi's deeper brown to Haribel's bronze tones, Kubo acknowledges the spectrum of color rather than treating characters of color with a singular reductionist color. And then you have the facial features of characters, which represents another area where Kubo breaks away from problematic anime traditions. He completely abandons the exaggerated lips and these simplified features which had characterized many earlier black anime and manga characters. Instead, characters of color within Bleach have distinctive, proportional features that vary naturally from person to person, just as his white and Japanese characters do. This approach normalizes black features within the anime aesthetic rather than treating them as inherently unusual or exaggerated aspects of those characters. And everybody unanimously agrees that Kubo is the drip master. Bleach handles fashion and personal style unlike any other manga that I've ever seen. Characters like Nimaiya have their streetwear-inspired puffer jacket and designer glasses, as this demonstrates how black characters can embody contemporary coolness without falling into stereotypes. Even when Kubo incorporates elements that could become stereotypical in less thoughtful hands like Love Aikawa's afro, Kubo treats these as personal style choices rather than them being racial stereotypes. The clothing and accessories of black characters within Bleach reflect their individual personalities and their roles rather than attempts to visually code them as black. I've spoken about this before, but characters of color are not relegated to singular factions, as there is a solid distribution pattern within Bleach. Kubo has a very sophisticated approach with how he handles these characters, as black characters appear within the Soul Society with Tōsen, as well as in the Vizards with Love, then the Royal Guard with Nimaiya, you have the Fullbringers represented with Jackie, and the Arrancar who have Haribel and Mila Rose, and you also have the Sternritter with the inclusion of Lil Barrow. This diverse representation normalizes ethnic diversity as a natural feature within the universe of Bleach rather than it being isolated to a singular group of people. And unfortunately this isn't the norm, as usually characters of color belong to a specific region or a faction, and this is a common tactic within fantasy which effectively segregates diversity to designated spaces. Somebody like Uetsu Nimaiya occupies perhaps the most significant position of any black character within Bleach. He has been dubbed as the creator of the Zanpakuto. These are the swords that are at the heart of the power system of Bleach. He literally forged the very foundation of the Soul Society's power structure. This positioning within the story gives a black character authorship over the series' central mythology. This is a rare creative choice by Kubo, which places a character of color at the core of the story world. Nimaiya's eccentric personality and his ultra-modern style make him instantly memorable, thus making this particular black character both pivotal to the world's history as well as being aesthetically cutting edge. Then you have someone like Jackie Tristan, who offers a different kind of representation value through her background. Unlike many black characters in anime who receive traumatic backstories centered on racial struggle, Jackie's background reveals a character who grew up in poverty but with loving parents. This character choice avoids the common trope of giving black characters uniquely traumatic origins while still acknowledging socio-economic realities. Her Fullbring ability is boots that grow stronger as they get dirtier, and this could be read as a metaphor for finding power through difficulty. As with a lot of symbology within Bleach, it never forces this interpretation onto the reader, as fans are allowed to interpret the story of Bleach in different ways without it being spoon-fed to them by Kubo. Characters of color appear as heroes, with Yoruichi as villains, with the example of Zomari, as morally ambiguous figures like Tōsen, and also neutral parties like Love Arikawa from the Vizards. This approach avoids the pitfall of making black characters either uniformly heroes or uniformly villains. Western media has had a troubled history of using blackness as a visual representation for a threat or even corruption. I think modern Hollywood has resorted to avoiding using black antagonists within movies, but this also has an issue of erasure. I love how Bleach navigates this complicated territory by creating black villains whose motivations, abilities, and characterization subvert rather than reinforce racial coding. You have the character of Zomari, the 7th Espada, who Kubo had assigned as a black antagonist in a very sophisticated manner. Zomari is seen as somebody who is meditating in his introductory scene. He speaks very carefully and he approaches combat with precision rather than brutality. His abilities further challenge stereotypical expectations as he is the self-proclaimed fastest Espada. Zomari possesses speed which requires discipline and practice rather than just having raw physical strength. His actual power is called Amor, which allows him to control anything that his eyes gaze upon. This requires intellectual application rather than brute force. This power allocation challenges the tendency to give black characters abilities that are centered on physical dominance instead of empowering them with control, influence, and intelligence. These are often traits that have been historically denied to black characters. Lil Barrow from the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach also offers another nuanced approach to black villainy. As a member of the elite Sternritter group called the Schutzstaffel, he occupies a position of significant authority within Yhwach's Quincy army. Lil's shrift ability, the X-axis, allows his attacks to penetrate through anything. This positions him as a sniper who relies on distance, precision, and calculation rather than close quarters combat or just the intimidation factor alone. Kubo's normalized approach allows black characters to be villains without their villainy being implicitly connected to their ethnicity. Kubo's approach is a significant evolution in how anime and manga portrays black antagonists. Rather than using racial characteristics as visual shorthand for threat or even moral corruption, Kubo creates villains whose complexity transcends their ethnicity. There are some critics who said that while Kubo gives some grotesque transformations to some of his black characters, and they cite examples like Tōsen and Zomari, but when you look at the series as a whole, Kubo gives grotesque transformations to a lot of his villains. I mean, look at Aranyaro's transformation or even Xylopero's. This isn't something that's unique to black characters, as these grotesque, hideous transformations are given to almost every single villain, even Sosuke Aizen when he transforms into that hideous butterfly form following the Hokyoku evolution, as he begins to evolve thanks to the Hokyoku. I think the hideous transformations are as a result of the corruption of that individual character and their twisted ideology, resulting in them taking on an outward hideous appearance which reflects their inward hideous ideology. Over 20 years after Bleach had first debuted, its influence on how characters of color are depicted within anime and manga still resonates even to this day, and you have fans of different ethnicities praising Kubo for how they had found representation within his work. Personally, I've never been a fan of Hollywood's approach to race swap characters or even gender swap them. I think that it's far better to come up with characters of color or gender which stand out on their own instead of being alternative swaps of existing popular characters. I think that Tite Kubo is a perfect example of how this can be achieved within media, and Bleach is still an excellent example as it holds up to this day with how it represents people of color. I know that personally I was able to relate a lot with characters like Chad, as I was often the tallest colored guy in the room, so seeing how Chad handled this in the story was absolutely incredible, where he has this belief of not fighting for his own sake but for the sake of helping others, as Chad adopts this belief of not using his fists for wrong reasons. And then you have individuals like Ichigo and Orihime who are discriminated and made to feel different because of their orange colored hair. It's amazing how Kubo weaves these plot lines into his story, as it results in something that we can all relate to regardless of our ethnicity. But yeah, we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about the representation of characters of color within Bleach? Do you agree or disagree with my takes in this video? Do you think that Kubo's representation of black characters is revolutionary like I do, or are you of a different mindset? Let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this one, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.